First of all, I would like to start with talabat. As let's say, nobody can unsee the technology that talabat brought to the market, also to the consumer behavior. So from Badr and Khaled, this is from, let's say, a regional and from the Kuwait territory. What are the changes that you have seen from the customer behavior to adapt to fintech and technology itself?
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me loud and clear? Good. So I think, as I mentioned before, I mean, probably even when I joined talabat a couple of years ago, I wasn't expecting that this massive growth in terms of technology in general. And I think post-COVID in particular, we've seen customers' behavior and consumers' adoption to technology is becoming larger and larger, right? But I think generally, if you look at the consumer behavior from a regional lens, I would say, there's a difference between market to market based on geography, based on the customer's demographic, based on the customers' preferences, the internet penetration. I mean, there's many variables, I would say, that varies. And I think most importantly also the readiness of the probably regulations and legislatures, et cetera, right? The biggest behavior I can see maybe in relation to what we are speaking today is the shift into a cashless economy. So I think in the last probably 5 to 6 years, the consumer behavior, in particular on talabat, has probably increased from like by 5 or 6 times, moving from cash into digital payments. So I think that's the biggest shift. Probably it's the same in particular in Kuwait.
In Kuwait itself, Badr, we have, like the first panel have said that Kuwait is have fast adoption for technology. From last years, how can we elaborate on this one?
أولاً يعطيك العافية ما قصرت إحنا. So on the regional view, I think Khaled gave a very good regional view of how fintech has benefited us. I think for Kuwait specifically, what I like to concentrate more on is how fintech drives efficiencies in our business and how fintech ultimately drives to better customer experience. In the opening comments, Khaled mentioned that we deal with 600 3PLs. Those 600 3PLs in Kuwait or logistics providers actually cover 100% of our fleet. We don't actually have any drivers. We work purely with the SMEs here in Kuwait. And as these business owners, their end goal is to generate as much revenue as possible, and they do that by delivering as many orders as possible. On average, a driver saves around 6 minutes when a customer pays via a tech solution, KNet, Apple Pay, credit card versus cash. And that 6-minute saving, order after order after order, actually translates to a single driver able to deliver more orders during his shift. So what does this mean? This means that a driver is able to generate more money. That means a local business owner from a 3PL business owner is able to generate more revenue for himself and his family and whatever it is. And ultimately, it means that we have more riders on the road, which provides more available riders for restaurants, like Basil's restaurants, and more available drivers for consumers. So the ultimate, I think, at least for Kuwait, because we are quite a saturated market, right? And I think customer experience is the key to Kuwait. We all compete in the same little pool, and consumers are going to choose the vendor or the aggregator that provides the best service. And if we're able to free up as many drivers with a more streamlined tech process, it ultimately leads to better customer experience. So that's I think is the essence of what fintech is helping us do here in Kuwait.
Going to Mr. Basil. Basil, as a food or restaurants company, implementation the technology in the journey for the customer. How did this journey began with you, and what is the outcome of it till this day?
I think we've seen how this technology has evolved along the years. We've started 20 years back when talabat was at its earliest form as a website ordering platform. And obviously, as more users get on board, the more benefit that is being passed on to the operators. But the adoption of technology has been accelerating along the years. And what led restaurant operators today to adopt it fully is that, end of the day, we are led by what is demanded by the consumer and not what we have to create. And therefore, the consumer behavior is really what leads us to become more agile and more advanced in the way that we adopt technologies and how we take advantage of that. Now, when we're talking about delivery platforms, obviously the type of cuisine, or let's say the type of restaurant, QSRs have the biggest share of that because they are more positioned to take advantage of that. However, some fine dining elevated restaurants do want to be a part of the platform to boost their sales. So there are different objectives of why a restaurant today would want to be part of that platform or any technology that will allow them to bridge the gap between them and their end customer. So definitely there is a shift in consumer behavior and the adoption of technologies that makes every operator think of technology as the number one point in which they will have to operate going forward.
Yes. Going to Mr. Fahad, Tab Payment and the payment partner of Jada Summits, you are the guy in the middle. You are the most important guy between all the technology that is there. So how is Fintech emerging and, let's say, collaborating with Foodtech and restaurants and traditional way of getting to or using the food technology or food sector?
Yeah. So thank you, first of all. Tap payment is in an infrastructure. So either you're offline like restaurants or fine dining, or you're online like platforms and food platforms. We try to enable both of them. So that's how we're looking at it and exploring it in that direction. And for the offlines, for the restaurants, for the fine dining, or for the online, the platforms, each one needs certain products and services. And that's how we're trying to do it. And we're trying to ensure that these kind of transactions are frictionless. People, when they go, they do their best services. And we offer the other side, the merchant, the platforms, talabat, Basil, restaurants, and we provide them some data that they can benefit from them in the future.
Okay, that's, let's say a specific answer. Inshallah, I don't know that if it is the technology that is used by your infrastructure, by talabat infrastructure, by Tab infrastructure, how it's, let's say, featuring the food sector itself. It's just a completion for my question.
Sure. Again, I'll use for checking out. There's a lot of new platforms for fine dining for consumers. So if you go to these kind of QR codes restaurants, Enable, Club, these kind of people, they're making the journey of a customer going to the restaurant and ordering and checking out a much more frictionless method. And we are part of that journey. We're enabling that when the guy goes and does his order and pay, splits, tips, whatever he needs to do on his end journey, it's available through Tap. And that's what we're trying to do. One of the other things we're trying to ensure that we offer them the best methods or payments methods. Today, actually with Apple Pay, the success rate on Apple Pay is 95% versus other local schemes, which are 75%. So we're trying to ensure that whatever the restaurants needs or the fine dining needs, and as a checkout page, is there for them.
That's good.
Would you allow me I think it's an interesting point, because if you look at fintech, technology, food, etc., I think accessibility and convenience is key. So eventually we need to reach to a stage where consumers don't really need to care about payment when they transact, especially in an environment where you transact with purchases with low value and high frequency. Payment should be the least thing that you bother to. So the more you have a seamless experience, you have an infrastructure, you provide alternative payment methods, is the better, whether you are actually transacting online or even transacting offline. So I think that's a very important point.
Yes. Okay, I'm coming back to that, and when I'm talking about fintech, I want to give this question to you, Mr. Khaled. There are too many, let's say, innovation of the fintech. Let's say one of them is the buy now, pay later. And we know some of the buy now, pay later sectors that are on the merchandise, on the cosmetics, let's say clothing, everything. Is that implemented in the food tech itself? And if there's any example you can give us to us?
Yeah. I think probably whenever we speak about fintech, buy now, pay later is probably like everyone speaks about buy now, pay later, and I think it's the talk of the town the last 2 to 3 years. And actually, we have this debate internally. We have our chief product officer here sitting in the room today, and we have this debate probably 2 years ago. Does pay later plays a role in the consumer behavior through the food, where you are actually transacting with a very low average basket with high frequency? I think the short answer is definitely yes. But I would like to elaborate a little bit. So if you look at the pay later, and I think pay later is becoming very popular probably globally because it is a very important matter of financial inclusion. The way pay later comes is to provide a bigger customer segment that is usually underserved, underbanked, where you can give them access of a very, very small credit limit that they can use online. I think that's the key. And that's probably why even lots of regulators started to look at buy now, pay later, because simply they want to make sure that these players provide reasonable, let's say, lending practices, right? They don't really abuse this. So I think back to the food, we've actually taken a decision and we said, okay, if we have the capability, if we have the technology, and we have the data, and I think data is key, we know our customers better than anyone else. We know how to score them based on their behavior. And I think, probably I would quote Henry Ford here when he said that if I would ask customer what they need, they would tell me that they need a faster horse. We know what customer needs, not what they want. So we've actually built an in-house pay later product. We call it a kind of a deferred payment. We rolled it out in UAE 2 years ago. And you will be surprised by the amount of adoption actually where consumers are using it, because believe it or not, many customers until now where you have a high penetration of mobile and internet and you have really good financial services, but still probably 50% of those customers depends on debit cards, not credit cards, because they are probably not allowed to get credit cards because of the risk appetite of the financial institutions. And all still cash is significant. If you offer a pay later solution where you don't really bother about your food bill and by end of the month you just settle, you would see a massive adoption. I think one of the panelists in the morning mentioned that if you don't create use cases, you won't be able to increase adoption, and that's key. We see this regionally, and hopefully we'll be able to roll it out in Kuwait. I know Badr is excited about it.
Yeah, this is something I wanted to actually discuss. I'm actually really excited about buy now, pay later. We'll take a step back and just reiterate on what Khaled said. We, as talabat as well, we face the same ordering cycles that almost any consumer business faces, right? You go to a mall, you go to a supermarket. Typically, you see that during salary week, when salaries are released in any country, orders spike, right? And then you typically see as people spend their money and as weeks go by, orders begin to decline. And then people sort of hold off on either shopping, hold off on going on ordering on aggregators, going out to restaurants, and then they spike again once salary comes up. And I'm sure, Basil, you must see something similar in your dine-in. Buy now, pay later really offers this equal opportunity to everybody, regardless of your salary scale, right? It opens a door to allow somebody in the middle of the month to place an order and enjoy a delivery experience that they typically wouldn't have done without buy now, pay later. So that's why I'm actually quite excited about it for Kuwait. Now, the first panel you did with Mohammed, who was up here talking from NBK, and Dalal, they mentioned regulation several times with Bank al-Markazi, and that is something that we do face. I think we're moving in the right direction. I think the central bank over the last few years has created a good framework to push us in this direction. I know Spare is now in the sandbox, but would I say it's moving as fast as I would like, and me being part of a tech company? Obviously, I like things to go faster. But I think once we get there, it's a very, very good tool for us to offer to consumers in Kuwait, not only through talabat, and I'm sure through any other e-commerce platform that's available in Kuwait.
Yes, and the question is for the man on the head of the food sector. Now we are talking about the consumer from using or utilizing the buy now, pay later. But from your perspective, as a restaurant owner. Did this technology impact in a good way, or just make it easier to attract more customers, or to enhance your experience at all from the consumer or from the head of the business itself?
Well, I think it's more of a symbiotic relationship between the technology and the consumer behavior, and how consumers also drive innovations in the technology, because you wouldn't innovate certain tools in technology if there isn't the demand for it. And that demand is layered over time. So as people get to adopt a certain technology, they do require certain features to be in place. So in a case in point, and it goes in different spectrums. If we start with QSRs, we started with our first digitally driven concept, Milk Bun, as from the start, we thought of it as a digitally driven concept where we wanted to shorten the period in which the orders are taking place. Now, this is not a new technology. We've seen multiple brands that have adopted it, but not on a local scale. So we wanted to have a digital kiosk where we connect directly to the kitchen rather than taking orders through a cashier. You have an application which, again, connects to the restaurant through different functions such as dine-in, pickup, as well as delivery. So why would we do delivery on our own? This is a third channel. We do require all kinds of channels to reach the consumer. So does that mean that we do eliminate the aggregators? No. It's just like any other channels. You have to have a diverse set of channels for the restaurants to push. But from that end, it's all about also the reduction of the layers of cost, because aggregators do add a layer of cost. And for the adding that, passing on the value to the consumer, we do need to have that lower cost structure to be able to not increase our prices, because end of the day, any restaurant needs to have a profit, or any business for that matter. So adding a layer of cost to a business which traditionally has low margins generally is making it challenging to innovate, is making it challenging to have the best quality as well as to have the best service. So it comes at a cost, and these challenges need to be met with ways that will reduce the expense to the operators. And that's on the front of the QSR. And as we move up to the fine dining or elevated dining, what kind of technologies can we adopt and see today as being the new technologies? So we've seen how payment solutions for checkout is becoming more in demand. We're seeing fine dining establishments completely skipping out the traditional payment where you ask for the check, where you can just use your phone to NFC enabled phones, basically to tap on the table, pay and go. Now, certain platforms have skipped something that is very essential, and I see some have been able to take that as a feature, which is the tips. Tips are very important to restaurants. So what we have lost in the past, as people have moved into basically the contactless payments, they have forgotten to carry cash with them. And by forgetting to carry the cash or not having any cash, they're not tipping the waiters. And the waiters get incentivized by these tips. So what they generally had 20% of their income is from tips, now has collapsed to close to 1 or 2% because of the lack of cash. So there are ways to mitigate these things, to be able to include tips as part of the checkout process, to ensure that these people that rely on these tips are also having them. So this is how we see the spectrum between going from QSR all the way up to fine dining and the adoption of technologies.
Yes. Thank you very much. And I think most of us have the same issue that now nobody carry cash now in these days, whether it's in a restaurant or hotels or any place that need to be paid tips for the guys that work there. Mr. Fahad, the buy now, pay later. It's emerging in every way in the Gulf. For Kuwait, it's still coming on the let's say, when the regulations that have been issued from the CBK recently, and also from the adoption from the Fintechs that's there. But TAB is always there before that everything is going to the moon. How you are seeing the challenges that is happening here in Kuwait and the opportunities of adding the buy now, pay later service to the food tech and let's say other sectors from your perspective?
Sure. TAP started 10 years ago, and during that journey when we first started, we were on the omni-channels, the social commerce, WhatsApp, Instagram, and that time was links and payments. And when came the e-commerce and Shopify's and all of that platforms, we had the first APIs and first technologies to support them. And that's what you did with buy now and pay later. So most of the platforms here in the region in that segments, maybe not in Kuwait and other markets, we were one of the first to enable them. And that's what we're trying to do, give them the right technology, the right APIs and libraries, so for them to enable to reach the consumer the right way. And that's what we're trying to do in that segment. We're not only doing the buy now, pay later product services, we're doing wallets, any open banking, all of these kind of connections, so that any new product or feature which comes to the market, we're ready to serve them in that area.
So that's good. So we're seeing that the technology that is coming, it will be implemented in any sector that we will be using as a consumer.
I will use Apple Pay as an example. So on the first day of Apple Pay, when it came first to Kuwait last year, on our first day, I think we are enabled around 8,000 merchants with one button from our side. And that's what we're doing the same with the buy now, pay later. If a service provider comes with all of the correct regulations here in Kuwait, I'm sure TAP will be sure to enable them on the first day to be reaching the whole consumer market in seconds.
I'm witness for that. I can witness. So back to the digital wallets, let's say innovation, the new technologies that the products and came. Khaled, this is for you. From your perspective, then the new innovation, the future of technology, Fintech, and put in the middle the food tech. From your experience, how this services and product will change the customer behavior in the future going on?
Maybe I will just build on pay later, because pay later is probably an example of how you change the behavior. When I mentioned about the financial inclusion, I think naturally we tend to think about consumers, but also think about the really large segment of SMEs that they don't have access to lending as well. So probably, I don't know, Basil maybe would agree or not, but as a restaurant's owner, if you need access to lending, it takes you a month to get it, right? With pay later, if you provide pay later also for merchants, financing, for example, a 50K ticket for a couple of days, pay later would provide this, right? I think the biggest issue with pay later is that when you look at the regulator, they look at it as purely a lending play. They said, okay, if you want to provide pay later, you should have a lending license. But there's a big difference between providing a loan of probably 30 KD for an individual versus providing a loan of 3 million KD for a corporate, right? I think that's important. But back to your question about how about the payment and technology, I think mobile wallet, for example, if you look at at markets like the Asian markets, if you look at APAC, I think one of the biggest payment penetration is mobile wallets. I think Saudi is going toward that direction. I think the mobile payments in Saudi is big, and I hope we can move toward that direction as well. So for me, I think it's all about, again, providing really a seamless payment option on the app. It will definitely change behaviors of customers.
So same question for you, but let's say, are we just focusing on the payments, or there's too many technologies and products that we can implement in talabat, let's say, from the Kuwaiti market, that we can enhance the customer journey with talabat?
Look, in essence, or in actuality, actually, we're a tech company, right? That's who we are. Yes. We are a tech company that acts as a middleman between restaurants, 3PLs, and customers. So our concentration is purely to improve our technology and offer new services. One of the things that Basil brought up that's really interesting. If you look at where we sit, right, we're sharing a stage, but if you look at where we sit on the scale of things, we're on opposite end of the spectrum, right? He's incentivized to drive customers to dine in. I'm actually incentivized to do the opposite. I'm incentivized to drive customers to stay home and order from talabat, right? So the question is, how do we meet in the middle? How can I develop technology that he could actually utilize in his dine-in, right? How can we meet them and become a partner not only at home and in their opinion, maybe driving customers out of their dine-in, but no, actually help him do both. Help him generate incremental orders from dine-in, from delivery, while helping him retain his dine-in customer base all through a talabat ecosystem. So I think there are a lot of things that we can do, and I think having this kind of conversation and having somebody like a leading restaurateur and a leading payment platform through TAP together, I think we can come up with something that allows us to meet in the middle and not actually be in the end of the spectrum, right?
Yes. I want to hear it from you, Mr. Basil. How can we meet in the middle in the same perspective as Mr. Badr said?
I think what talabat and different aggregators have is a lot of data that we could use. And this is the data that we as operators do not have access to. Understanding what is the peak times, understanding what cuisines are trending today, understand what areas have the highest spending. These kinds of data, especially for operators that develop their own concepts like us, and with the advent of cloud kitchens, because that's what really gives an advantage to create a cloud kitchen that does not have a service layer, a cost that does not basically does not help the business moving forward with a delivery service because of the capex in terms of building out your furniture and interiors and the service layer. But cloud kitchens eliminates all of that, and it's a pure food delivery concept. And by tapping into the data that aggregators such as talabat has, we can create solutions for the consumers that will maximize the opportunity of tapping into the market. So yes, there are ways to bridge the gap. There are ways to collaborate and create business opportunities through sharing of data, as well as utilizing the cloud kitchens, which I believe they already have started as well.
The same question, Fahad, as a middleman, the aggregator, and connecting all the sectors together. What's the main point that you think TAP can do in this, in connecting them and bridging them together?
Sure. I mean, I'll top on the same question that point he just mentioned, the cloud kitchens. Today, if you're a cloud kitchen, you're an owner, you need working capital, and you're going to go to a bank, maybe take a lending or structure something like that. And that's how we're trying to offering infrastructure for these banks to ensure when the order happens on talabat from the restaurant, the bank gets his money first. So we're trying to do some splitting options, features, and making it a more seamless transaction for the bank, for the cloud kitchen, and for the aggregators.
So gentlemen, we have only 4 minutes, so if I can have final words from you, starting with you, Mr. Badr, to conclude our panel.
First, thank you, Al-Jarida, and I think getting different minds together in a single conference is a very important endeavor. So I'd like to thank everybody from Jarida for doing this. I would like to reiterate one thing that I think was repeated in the first panel and here again. I think our ability as a country to move fast on creating the right frameworks and opening up regulation for technology is important. And I think once that happens, and I repeat, we are on the right track for sure, but once we get to the end point where the regulation is on par with our ambition, I would say, is when we can see a big leap in what we're doing today. So I personally look forward to buy now, pay later. I look forward to the open banking that Spare does. I look forward to a lot of things being introduced into the market very soon, inshallah.
Hopefully soon. Mr. Khaled.
Sure. So I think similar to what was discussed in the morning when you speak about fintech, banks, and telcos working together toward a common goal, I think on the stage it's probably the same, right? We as a technology provider, we have an immense amount of data and technology capability where we can provide to restaurants owners to capture the customer's behavior based on their data, not only online but also offline. Because I think one of the biggest pain point on the offline point is that you have no idea this customer's preferences. While online, you would be amazed and you would be surprised by how shopping behavior varies from a consumer who uses an Android versus who uses the one of Apple, or whether you are someone who orders junk food like me and you end up with a belly, or someone who eats healthy. These data on the offline side, restaurants owner, they have no idea about it. We can provide the technology, but also we need the infrastructure where also it enables us to connect with the financial institution to process payment. We need payment processors, the likes of TAP. So I think we work together to complement and provide consumer with the right experience. Finally, again, a big thank you for Al Jarida. I think there's a very exciting topic to speak about. So thanks for having us.
Thank you very much. Mr. Basil.
First of all, thank you for this opportunity. I think we've been discussing more of the consumer-facing technologies that we are adopting and we're taking advantage of as operators. But there are different opportunities that could also facilitate operators such as us in dealing with areas such as vendor management, for example. Now, we still have the traditional approach of dealing with vendors in a way that has not really evolved into the 21st century. We still deal with manual contracts. We still deal with terms that are varying from vendor to vendor, as well as the payment process and how we handle the payments. Now, this is also a benefit for both, either the vendors and the operators themselves. So there are ways that the fintech solutions could come and look at that as a possible opportunity for the future.
Thank you very much. Appreciated. Fahad, last word.
I'm very honored, honestly, today to be here. And what makes me more happier to be here, that talabat, Gastronomica, TAP are Kuwaitis born and raised to become regional superstars. So it's always very honorable to see that the Kuwaitis from the Kuwaiti market became one of the leaders in the whole region. So that makes me happy, and I wanted to mention that. The other point was, again, what CBK did in Kuwait is really amazing, and it's really pushing things ahead of the curve. And we hope that we see more of that on the both sides, on the consumer. And again, maybe I mentioned the cloud kitchen, even on the vendor sides, on the merchant sides. We want to see more regulations in that kind of segments, pushing more products in the right way, faster open banking, buy now, pay later. So we can see more fintechs that graduate from Kuwait and go to the region.
Inshallah, hopefully soon. And gentlemen, thank you.